everyone. Welcome to Pillow Talks. My name is Norton Owen. I'm Director of Preservation here, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this conversation about dancing the algorithm. This is the exhibit that will be opening tomorrow in our brand new Doris Duke Theater. And yes, hooray for that. And I have just a couple of announcements to make before we get started and before I introduce our guest today. We are doing a lot of things this week that are from tomorrow on through the following week about the new Doris Duke Theater. And in this brochure, which is everywhere, you will see this 2-page spread inside that details everything that's going on. A lot of the events are free. Starting with open house tomorrow that we'll be hosting, the opening of the exhibition that all of these folks are involved in, and conversations, many other things that are happening over the next week. And one of which I want to point out in particular because next week's Pillow Talk at 4 o'clock, same time as always, but different place. So we will be doing that Pillow Talk in the new Doris Duke Theater. So if you have not bought tickets to see something else in there already this week, just know that the talk, which is free, will be in the space at 4 o'clock. And that is with Aoi Nakamura and Esteban Lecoq. They'll be doing a performative presentation moderated by our executive and artistic director, Pamela Taggi. So 4 o'clock next Saturday. So what I would like to do in introducing today's talk is first very briefly introduce each of our guests. I say very briefly because each of them has a resume that would take us the entire time to go through. So I just want to give you a couple of sentences about each one of them, and then we're going to explore more about their work and also their backgrounds as we embark on this talk. So sitting right next to me is Katherine Helen Fisher, who is a dancer, choreographer, curator, creative producer, and Emmy Award-nominated film director. Her work looks at the boundaries between digital and physical worlds through the intersection of performance and technology. And her work, Bodies in Hyperreality, is part of the exhibition, but she is also the curator of the exhibition. So we'll also have a lot to talk about in terms of that. Next to her is Ying and Bedal, who is a Los Angeles-based designer and thought leader in human-computer interaction. Her choreography and media art practice bridge decades of dance training with over a decade of industry experience in physical computing systems. And her work, 30 Points of Departure, is part of the exhibition as well. In fact, it has pride of place you'll see it as you come in the front door of the Doris Duke Theater, even as you're coming down the walk, about to go in, because it's a huge monitor which shows her work as well as several other artists' work beautifully. And then finally, we have Xin Ying, who is a dancer, choreographer, mother, and interdisciplinary artist, exploring the intersection of movement, technology, and digital legacy. A principal dancer with the Martha Graham Dance Company since 2011, she has performed many of Graham's most iconic roles and done some of them here at the Pillow. And her work, Lamentation, Dancing the Archive, is receiving its world premiere here this week. So for all of our guests, welcome to you, and thank you for being with us today. I also, while we're talking about introductions, I know that there are a number of collaborators. The saying "it takes a village" was never more appropriate than talking about this kind of cross-disciplinary and very involved work that involves various people with various specializations. So I want to invite anyone who has participated in any of these works that we're showing this week, that we're debuting, to please stand. Yes, I'm looking at some of the people who, yes, please. Yeah. So it's many hands have been involved in this. So I wonder if we could start, as I said, with a little bit of origin stories. Each of you has led a life that is different than most regular dancers, and also different than most technologists. So if you could each give us a sort of thumbnail history of what your journey has been and how you came to do the work that you're doing now. Starting with you, Kate.
Norton, thank you so much. It's a huge honor to be here with you, and thank you to the team at the Pillow and to our team at Dancing the Algorithm. It's a huge, huge honor to be here. I think I would start when I realized that I was not going to be able to dance forever at the same ability that I had been used to dancing. So in the middle of my career, I had danced with Momix and some other companies where we really toured hard. We'd do like 300 shows a year sometimes. And I was also aware that I didn't own my own image. Like sometimes I would ask for footage, and that was proprietary to the choreographer. And so this led me to think about archive and preserving kind of my body in the form. And I got really interested in photographic forms and started making dance films. And from there, I started working with interactive technology. I started partnering with a company, Standard Vision, in Los Angeles, who manufactures these monolithic LED screens. And we had some commissions to make dance films for those that wrap around big skyscrapers. And I got really excited about dance film as public art and broadening the audience of dance in media.
And had you already stopped dancing by the time this? No, you were still dancing.
I was still dancing.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was really great. I was working with Lucinda then, and I would be on tour.
Lucinda Childs.
Yeah, for about half the year, and the other half of the year, I'd be furiously starting the company that we founded. My husband and I founded, Safety Third Productions, and so just wearing different multi-hyphenate. Right. I think all dancers these days are really multi-hyphenate because it's so difficult to sustain a living in this field.
Mm-hmm. Well, but were there any seeds that you can think of now? It's always interesting when, as we progress through a career, there are things that you look back on differently, than maybe you felt them at the moment. I wonder if you experienced anything like that, any feeling like, oh, I have these other interests that maybe all the other dancers around me don't have.
Totally. Well, I was raised in a really religious household, and media was really restricted for me. So when I got to NYU for undergrad, I discovered film studies, and I was studying that concurrently with dance, and just amazed at like the films of the world. And we studied, French New Wave and all sorts of genres that just my eyes were opened, and I was really in love with that form. And then also I got to work with Lucinda collaborated with Saul LeWitt on who's a visual artist who made a beautiful film that was projected on the scrim, the downstage scrim of Dance, her historic work that was made in 1979, the year I was born. And so I toured that work for many years, and seeing Saul's visual language in collaboration with Lucinda's choreographic, statements, I felt that like this is what I have to do. This kind of extended cinema and movement.
Well, fascinating that you would have landed with a choreographer whose work really kind of led you into this, and you followed where it led you.
Yeah, and Lucinda did the Bell Labs project, I think, early on.
Yes.
There were initiatives for people to be funding choreographers and technologists. I think Rauschenberg was involved in that. So, I mean, those artists really have been, people that I've long revered and looked up to. Warhol and, just the classic. Not that interesting maybe to some people, but I've just been fascinated by their work.
Fantastic.
Not that they're not interesting.
Right. No, of course. So, Lauren, how about you in terms of both dance and technology? How did you get to be here?
Yeah, it was quite and thank you again for having me and for the invitation for this exhibition, and to all of the fellow collaborators. It was quite the journey. I would say I studied dance at The Ohio State University. Any alumni here? But the program was very multifaceted. It had, dance and technology. It had dance film. It had so many different facets. And it was there that I was really exposed to this idea of dance and technology.
Did they have a motion capture studio already when you were there?
Yes, they had the ACAD lab, the Center of Advanced Computing and Design, and that was led by fabulous people, including Nora Zuniga-Shaw, other folks that worked on very iconic work such as synchronous objects. So that is where I really learned. There was a light bulb moment for me that this could be a career, or there's a facet within the dance industry that caters towards more technological exploration.
And that light bulb moment was happening for you even while you were in undergraduate school then?
Yeah, I would say that was a little bit of a light bulb moment. Mm-hmm. And then after graduation, I moved to San Francisco. And at the time, this was kind of height of Silicon Valley. This was height of the tech boom. And as a designer and choreographer at the time, I was actually living with a roommate that was working in virtual reality at the time. And he brought me over one night and he was talking about this experience that he's building in 3D space. And he was saying, we're trying to figure out these problems of how objects are moving in space, how this person should kind of transition to this other area of the room. And these ideas came so naturally to me because of my choreographic and my dance background. And that was the second light bulb moment of, okay, my background in choreography can actually inform how we design experiences in virtual reality for other spatial computing arenas. So I started kind of speaking and talking about this maybe wild intersection to some of how the field of dance could inform the design of spatial computing experiences for consumer products. And it actually led me to be recruited by Google. I was recruited to work at a small research and development team there called Google Advanced Technology and Projects Group. And there they worked on hardware devices and basically the future of how people interact with technology. So my task being on this small R&D team of artists and designers and researchers was really to bring a choreographic perspective of how we design embodied interfaces. So really thinking of beyond mouse and keyboard, beyond tapping a screen or swiping up, really using your full body to interact with computers.
And for you, did your dance work continue as you, and has it continued? I mean, yes?
Yeah, I would say it's challenging. I think when you're kind of working full force in the tech industry, especially in these research and development teams that are very fast paced, it's hard to keep up an artistic practice. And I think to your point around multi-hyphenate, always having many irons in the fire, it takes a lot of discipline to have various, aspects of your creative work. But my artistic practice still continues. I still maintain a media art practice, which is related to what's, in the exhibition now. But kind of the central theme of both of my work, both in the tech industry as well as my media art practice, is really about how computers understand and perceive human movement. So that can take many shapes and forms, both kind of in the industry and also with my artwork.
Well, thank you. And of course, turning to Ying, I wonder, we have seen you perform quite recently here at the Pillow. So I wonder if you would talk about this, how you got to where you are at this point and what that has meant, what that journey has been for you.
So thank you, Norton, to have me, and thank you, everyone. I know this is not what we planned in the beginning. I'm so glad the plan was changed, so we are be able to sit here to talk about our work. So I came to New York 2010 for Martha Graham from China, and I fell in love with the technique right away because the contracting release is really talking to my body And I realized, oh, emotions generate your body. There's a certain energy emotion can give you, even the negative ones. So I think that's what taught me the most, because I'm from a Chinese classic trained background, which is, as a female dancer, you always have to be very pretty, certain, expression you have to contend. And Graham really taught me how to, just go for it, be raw. And then just throughout the years, I'm actually from the generation we're still using DVD players. Like from the beginning we use disc. You have to carry like a book. Then this is a rap I have to learn. Then put in the little DVD players. And then later on, 2012, we had the Sandy. Then we got funding. This is something unfortunate and coming from the best situation we can actually
The
have.
Hurricane Sandy affected the Graham Company in particular.
Yeah, a lot of archive stuff were lost, and that make people thinking how we preserved it. We started changing the mindset. Everything starting become digital. Now we just have link. You just go to the link, then you watch it. I'm that generation. So for us, we always know technology is part of it to preserve, to protect. And in 2018, Graham did a Google residency, and I was one of the choreographers and the dancers in that. I had so much fun, and from there, I just felt technology giving you a tool to discovering something we'll miss. There are disconnection. Like as a dancer, I'm dancing on stage. There are two ways of sense. One is from audience point of view, because we watch in the mirror all the time, so we know what the shape looks like. One is the embodiment from the dancer's point of view. And there's a gap, there's disconnection. I keep thinking, why, when I talk about, for example, a piece like a Lamentation, right? Also, Lamentation, that piece. And from the audience point of view, always see very iconic, the shapes, very like American modern aesthetic, like sculpture-like. But for me, always thinking about how hard the tube, you have to stretch it out, keep the shape there. You feel the vibration inside, you feel the sweat dripping on, dripping off your body. And I was thinking, what kind of tool I can use to break the gap? That's what I'm very interested in, how to reactivate the archive through technology. Yeah. And then I went to school at NYU. I just graduated, actually.
Yay.
It's May. I just got my MFA in dance interdisciplinary research, and I spent pretty much half of my time in NYU Tisch ITP, which is where the technology were very focused there. And that's where I actually met all my collaborators on that same day. Then I discovered a volumetric video. I was thinking this will be so great to put a lamentation in volumetric. Then the audience can interact with it. You can stretch, you can turn. You can actually see much more up close. And also, most importantly, when you're watching, interactive with it, you have to dance. Force you to dance with the archive. Then you have a sense of the embodiment the dancer is experiencing. So basically, that's kind of my focus. I did quite a few projects. One of my piece, Letter to Nobody, using AI, which led me to have the opportunity to dance with Martha Graham on stage. This is all the tools, the question I'm asking, like the gap between me and Martha, for example. I have never met her. Now I'm dancing for her for 15 years. Then what the possibility can come from that? Yeah.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about ways that technology may be able to help with things that I think have always been a dream for, particularly with you speaking about how audience members maybe don't have the ability to feel the same thing that a dancer is feeling. But what I've always observed is that dancers watching dancers have a different perspective because they can feel they know what it feels like. So they are doing something different than just being a spectator. They're also embodying it if even in their minds.
You should
right?
see Janet Albert, which is our artistic director, my great mentor. All the possibility I think is possible with technology, she started. She's also very encouraging. She's very good with social media. She's upfront. Anyway, when you just said, if you're watching Janet Albert in rehearsal, when we do a piece, Janet Albert will be sitting there. She will be like, she is really trying. She feels like she's giving you 25% of the energy when you get the leg up. Yeah, it's very interesting.
That's really fascinating. Well, I think one of the things that all of all of the works that you're doing share, and this is what I want to get into next, is just what technology offers to both artists and to audiences that is different from, particularly in the dance realm. Okay, so we're seeing dance, and now we're talking about technology being a part of it. Well, what is that, right? What can technology do that can't be transmitted just by a dancer performing for an audience? That's a very big question, but I wonder, Kate, because you are curating this exhibition, so everything that we're seeing, to be clear of what that means, what we are seeing in the exhibition space in the Doris Duke Theater is your concept of things that you wanted to bring, the things that you wanted audiences to see in this initial exhibition. So
I can't take credit for all of that because Pam and Kim and I had many meetings where we extensively discussed artists, and it was really a dialectical conversation where we went back and forth, and I really appreciated that. And this whole process, which has been about a year in the making, springing from the Digital Futures think tank with Katie Kwan and Grisha Coleman and Sydney Skybetter and Shamal Pitts and just really incredible artists that to be in dialogue with them with not really a clear initiative, just to be in dialogue about these issues has been just life-changing. And so this work kind of springs from that, and also from really delighting in the fact that I've spent, over 25 years in the field, and I know people, and go back. And so it's really nice to be able to kind of seam all of these histories together. But what I would say is, people hear the word cyborg or transhumanism, and they feel afraid. Understandably. And there is fear in this, right? We don't know about the tsunami that's heading towards us and how rapidly the technology is increasing so fast. But we are already cyborgs. We see our world through our phones. And not to say that we have to bring that into dance, but I think it would be dishonest if we didn't fold some of that mediated kind of worldview into the practice.
So you're saying we're already there in some ways.
We are there.
Yeah.
We are there. And it's okay to resist it. There's space for that, yes. But I think it is also okay to welcome it in and say, what is this? How does this affect my perception of reality and time and gravity and embodiment? And I think when we shut ourselves off from the technology, but we're still using it so pervasively, we can tend to do this with our bodies, right? But I want, like what Lauren is saying, to be really expanding into it. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, I think it puts us to the next spot on it for sure. And since you were referencing Lauren's work there, what do you have to say about that and the role that technology plays in making this bridge?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting to see this from both angles. One, from the angle of developing technology and interactive experiences for consumer products, and then looking at that from more of the artistic realm. I think within the there's a fly. I think within the dance industry, there's a common view of technology as being something that's, for lack of a better term, like slapped on at the end. You have your piece, you develop the choreography, and then you have then you introduce technology. Whereas, when we develop interactions and technology from the very beginning, the design and the choreography is at the very beginning of the process and continues throughout the process to the final result. So when you get a final result, you can feel there's a tangible quality that choreography and that thinking has been imbued from the beginning. And I think that's something that I would encourage the next generation of dance artists that are using technology to think of it as a material and think of it as a way that you can imbue that throughout the entire choreographic life cycle, from ideation, from working with your dancers in the studio, iterating on certain concepts, bringing in other themes, having time where you're exploring multiple different technological approaches to the same problem. Some artists maybe get hung up on a cool workflow or a cool, app to use, where that might not be the only way to get an artistic concept across. So when I think of art and technology and dance and technology and how we can begin to think of that as a dance community, I'm hoping we can start to shift. There's a perspective shift that needs to happen to think of it more as a material that choreographers have in their toolkit from the very beginning.
Well, yes. Well, it's interesting that you say about the, some of the technology and speaking about the next generation, because I think that's something that we see over time, how younger generations, something that we feel is revolutionary somehow isn't revolutionary. That's just something they have learned from the beginning how to deal with. So do you see that difference even from where you stand in your career? You're seeing that others coming along after you have, because I'm thinking about you being at Ohio State with the motion capture studio. It's like, well, it sort of seems like everything was already there in some senses, but maybe not as much as you anticipate that it will be there.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Some of this technology, even AI, it's become a very much a household term, which is very interesting over the last 4 or 5 years. The fact that my mom knows what ChatGPT or AI model is. Yeah. We've been working with machine learning models and AI models and all of that, decades ago. It's existed since the 60s. It's just that it's kind of proliferated within society in the container of consumer products that are very impactful for people. So in that realm, I think a lot of this technology, motion capture, has existed for a while. There's dance artists that have used this in their work, and I think that it's on multiple axes. The fidelity and the fidelity of what these technologies can capture increases. The cost of these technologies gets cheaper, better, faster, kind of is like, the 3 axes. These things improve over time, and I think, people kind of need to learn to keep up with that, and then as an artist figure out how that falls within your creative work and is in service to that creative work. I'm working on this grant project right now through the Knight Foundation, and we're developing AI tools for choreographers. So at the core of that really is a community-based approach of how do we bring the dance community together to talk about what is this big thing, AI, and how do we involve this within the choreographic process. So we're working with a lot of dance educators, a lot of other scholars, folks here, anyone, that's interested to join the conversation should be. But I think it's about also facilitating conversations and spaces for people to come to, like Jacob's Pillow, to grow their own relationship to it. And I think there's an access issue because some of it is so expensive that there's no avenue for people to form the relationship to it. So outside of maybe in college, where there is the motion capture lab,
Right.
you can experiment with it for 3 years, and then you might not have access to those facilities anymore.